second. All right, it says we're live. Let me pull it up on here because I've done this before where I've done 10 minutes in. There we go. All right.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone. We don't have an intro. We don't do all that. I can't be bothered to mess with it. I can't be bothered to be professional. Today we have a very, very special guest. He is the creator and mind behind Europos, which is easily my top 3, if not favorite, YouTube channel to ever exist. He combines, you're welcome, philosophy, religion, myth, art, name it, in a way that most people do not and would never think to do. So I'm allow him to introduce himself. This is Carlos. Carlos, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Carlos Perona, however you want to pronounce it. We were talking about this before we went live, pronunciation. I run Europos on YouTube, on Substack as well, and sort of kind of on Twitter, not really. Yeah, as you said, I deal with different topics. Initially, we were talking about this as well. It was just anything that came to mind, but it's kind of now solidified around symbolism, theology, philosophy, to some degree, politics I touch on as well, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, and this is the channel here, guys. Europos, Europos. And I'm just going to jump right into it. What has struck me so much about this channel, and we mentioned it briefly, is the fact that you do all of those things and you do them well, especially in the current space of things. If you find an interesting thinker, they tend to be political or they tend to be philosophical. They do not tend to combine art in particular and myth, and most importantly, all of these things together. And there was this idea popularized, I think it was by Steve Bannon. I don't know, where he would say, politics is downstream from culture. And it's like, yeah, that's nice, but there's things downstream from culture, and it keeps going and it keeps going. And I mean, religion is one thing that's downstream from culture. You don't just get culture magically out of nowhere, and you don't magically change culture to change politics. And in fact, I'm trying to pick your brain here. I don't think it's a linear view of things. I think it's a circle. I think all of these things influence all of these things together, and that's how you get culture. That's how you get people who think a certain way and act a certain way, and that's how you get the world in general.
Yeah, I think it's it's a Mobius strip. Politics is downstream from culture, and then culture is downstream from politics as well, in a weird way. Yeah, Bannon or Breitbart, I think, might have originated
Maybe
it.
that
I don't
was
know.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fair. The idea that you have to affect the memes that are out there, and the sort of way that people think about certain stories, to change politics. But at the same time, frankly, politics, once you have power, you're going to affect how people think, and you're going to be able to manipulate levers of mass communication in ways that are going to do that too. But if you don't have that, then yeah, tell stories affect the how the archetype shows up in people's minds, and then you can change other things, including politics and institutions. But that might not be the main thing you want to change. You want to change the way people think, or you want to change your own approach to things, or you want to engage with culture in a healthier way.
Oh yeah. Well, it kind of just goes back to what you said. Intent matters. Intent of what you want to do, and then that's how you approach things. And you're going to. This is my frustration as an artist. I don't believe all art is political. I reject that notion, but I believe that all of it ties together all so completely. And you cannot, as an artist or a person in politics, ignore any of it. You have to engage on all fronts. And it seems, I'm going to run my train of thought. I'm going to ramble a little bit. I'm going to try to keep that in check, but you have to understand that reality and you as a person, and I don't really like this term, but you're a holistic being. Everything affects everything always.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems we try to break things up, even like a term like professionalism really that just means money. And I saw this briefly come up with your talk with Jay Burden, which was a great interview, by the way.
Oh
And
yeah.
y'all briefly touched on the idea of, and I'm not a leftist by any means, but we have to get into this, that capital, if you want to call it that, or just greed or just money, breaks up everything. It destroys and atomizes not only the individual, but culture and culture from the individual, and on and on and on and on. It's mammon. It is a god focused on one thing. And when you do that, everything gets out of order and everything goes under that totalitarian view.
Yeah, I think if what ends up happening, I mean, I think there's two things. There is this ideological commitment to the idea that the best way to get positive outcomes collectively is for people to pursue rational self-interest, but in economic terms, because that's how you quantify. If you want to pursue rational behavior, you have to put a number on things so that it can be a calculation. And if it's a calculation, then okay, we can objectively decide to pursue course X instead of course Y. So there is that, and you do get that with some of the liberals, especially then with some of the Austrian school, who will insist that no, it's subjective theory of value, it's whatever you want to pursue. But then you get passages in von Mises and elsewhere that are very explicitly telling you, I mean, it's backward and it's equivalent to feudalism or whatever else if you aren't attaching a number to activities. So there's this kind of weird sense that Enlightenment reason should be monetized calculation. Okay, that's the ideological aspect of it. Most people aren't thinking in those terms. I think that the more practical aspect of it is that if a certain idea or a set of images dominate in the minds of people, that's the market. And if your ideas, your stories are very out of sync with that, boy, it's hard to find a market for them. You want to make money as an artist and you deserve to make money as an artist, but you have to break through this kind of impasse, which is it's like the Galapagos effect. I think people used to talk about Japan as having such an idiosyncratic culture that when a product would succeed in Japan, the rest of the world would have no idea what that product was, you know, how to market it, or it just wouldn't be receptive to it because it was like the Galapagos, right?
Mhm.
Evolving very idiosyncratic forms. Now, that's what people used to say. Obviously, Japan is extremely attractive to foreigners today. So actually, you know, that level of contrast or weirdness worked in their favor. So I think it's a battle for headspace very often that the artist is faced with, unless he's making slop, unless he's making, you know, he's reacting to whatever's already out there and just kind of mimicking it or whatever. And that's also a problem with mass media. I wonder whether the internet breaks that up a little bit because it does allow you more channels. It would be cool to get your perspective as well on that. At the same time, you see things proliferate so quickly and it just imitates, like, you know, you see a trend on X, for example, and it can be completely made up. It doesn't actually, you know, maybe it's an AI video, but everybody's kind of using the same wording and you've got 50 different accounts pushing it. So it's both. I think the internet can have that effect as well of just blocking different stuff, different output, but it's obviously also an advantage, I would imagine.
I think so. I think it is a double-edged sword to that degree, but I think it isn't as much of a paradox or as a conundrum as we really think it is. And I mean, I could be wrong here, but I think it's just a microcosm of the rest of the world of what we just discussed, because power is clearly operating in the internet.
Mhm.
Something can appear natural when it was pushed by corporations or pushed by governments. And I mean, I think that's been the goal since the term viral in applying to the internet started.
Mhm.
I think as soon as a conduit of power appears, it's filled. I mean, was it power abhors a vacuum? So I think it's a double-edged sword. I think there can be independent things that break through. I think most of it is probably corporate backed. I think that we're just entered the next level of marketing, the next level of promotion that we've always been in. My big fear, not fear, but my big frustration is that you're clearly old enough as well as I am to remember the internet being more of a Wild West, and there would be hyper niches of places or places you could go, like forums in general. They're still up there. You can go find like 20, 30-year-old forums of people talking, and they talk much nicer than they do on social media. Like they weren't insulting people left and right. But it seems now that the internet is basically four websites.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. YouTube as well used to be very different. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be, of course, the corporate backed element there. Certain narratives get pushed, but yeah, yeah, and then the Frankfurt Schoolers were right to make the point. Adorno made the point that even though I'm critical of them, I've made videos criticizing them. That once an idea is really ingrained in people, you don't really need to push it all that much. It perpetuates on its own. It has its own momentum, and it can be very comfortable to sort of default to that idea, even if you disagree with it. So what ends up happening is that it becomes the framing device for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I think often when you're reacting against dominant narrative or tropes, what you end up seeing is that a lot of creators, they really emphasize what they don't like, and so they want to find what they don't like everywhere, even where it isn't.
Yeah.
So you do get this tendency to say, well, this is a girl boss character. It's not really a girl boss character. There's been 50 girl boss characters, but that's not one of them. No,
Oh
no, it
yeah.
is. I need to make a video about how everything is a girl boss and everything is feminism. So you end up as a critic reinforcing the presence of this thing that you don't like, and that happens a lot. Like that's become its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're the main thing, and then the critics are just the shadow of that thing instead of being an alternative source of light, which is annoying.
Well, it goes back to that idea that's capital devouring everything. They have an
Mm,
incentive to complain, and it's usually monetary. And if it's not monetary, then it's fame or adoration or just attention. I know the term attention economy gets thrown around, but it is true. It does feed off narcissism. I don't mean that in the clinical sense, just maybe just self-aggrandizement and monetary value. But it's funny you mentioned the girl boss thing. I wrote a Substack based on the trailer for the new Zelda movie because people are saying she's a girl boss. I was like, well, she's a goddess. Like this is an old story. This, if anyone's a boss and feminine, it's a female goddess. Like what do you? This is
right.
an old pagan idea. You can't complain about this in the modern sense of feminism, as you say. But something to run with what you said. Something I think the postmodernists and the neo-Marxists were right about is the fixation with power. And I know Peterson and some other guys kind of attacked that idea, but as I'm a Christian in the traditional sense, I don't believe that power and truth can be separate. I don't believe that power by necessity of being power is corrupting. I don't think power by definition is bad. And it seems like that's one of those memes and thoughts that's been in our culture for at least since World War II. Anyone in power is evil or is going to be.
Mm. Yeah, but it goes with this idea, I think, of the starving artist, the
Mm-hmm.
nobility of poverty, the nobility of disempowerment. Um, uh, I mean, the criticism of power that you get in neo-Marxists, I mean, it depends on the thinker, but there is definitely the sense that power is evil if it is connected to a definite form. uh, Power exercised against form or against that which has been dominant becomes noble. They're not anti-statist. On the contrary, very
Clearly,
often.
right?
So yeah. So, but there is a rhetorical game there as well, which is to pretend that power is always with that which is coherent or inherited, so that
Hmm.
it doesn't really matter what's been dominant over the past few decades. It matters that uh, that a certain form has the character you associate with power. So it's still a patriarchy, or it's still white supremacy, or it's still whatever, because that was dominant, or because you view those ideas as inherently aligned with power, even if the state, or even if dominant cultural institutions are on the other side. So power becomes a kind of free floating referent. It becomes a sort of it's abstracted from the actual exercise of coercion. I think that's the game that's been played in the West, in Europe, where I live, and I know in the United States, because our culture is really just American culture trickling east.
I'd apologize, but we did have Van Halen, so there's that.
Yeah, hey, I'm not. Yeah, I'm actually quite. As you can tell from the accent, I'm affected by you guys, and I've got nothing against American culture as such. I think American culture has a lot to recommend it, and I think weirdly, in a kind of paradoxical way, it's become the basis for a sort of pan-European
Hmm.
cultural project. Like if I talk to a friend of mine from Germany, who went to the same kind of schools as I did, we speak in terms of American cultural references with each other very often, right? So,
Well, with what you've just said, do you believe, not you, but in the abstract, do you believe that there could be this idea, like as a culture, that we could hold to the notion of a good king again?
oh, yeah, I think so. I think so. I think people are hungry for that. Do you mean hold to the idea of a good king in terms of putting our believing that the exercise of power can be noble, or believing
Yes.
that it's actually happening, that like the guy in power is good?
Well, both, that we could have someone who wields power justly and they themselves, to most extent, are just.
I think we can. I think most people want that. I think most people are hungry for that. I think you saw that with Trump, whose bitter disappointment aside, I think he, as a cultural force in 2016, let's say Trump
Hmm.
1.0, showed us that people want that. People want they want to believe that the guy in power is going to wield power correctly and for, human flourishing. That's never gone away. I think there is now maybe something slightly new, which we're gonna see how that develops, which is that there's a certain segment of society that will be sort of perpetually paranoid,
Yes.
because whatever cultural thing becomes dominant, whatever political movement occurs, they fold it back into some narrative about, well, this must be a controlled op, or there's something shadowy behind it. So I think we've gotten to this kind of we probably have more of that kind of, and they're not wrong about a lot of it. They're right about a lot of it, but they're wrong about a good amount too. And so there's that kind of schizo segment of the population that's maybe larger now than it has been in the past. And they're always going to view anything that happens with suspicion, which is kind of like the weird, you know, you're you're almost blocking the solution to the problems that you're seeing, because you can't believe in any solution. I think that is there, and I think that's going to be
Yeah.
dangerous. I think part of that is, I made a video in which I sort of related this to the idea of Spengler's second religiosity,
That was it.
sort of late civilizational mentality that crops up. But I think that is still a minority. I think it's very online. I think it's non-existent, almost non-existent with older people, because with them you do get stuff like that. You got QAnon, but the point was to have hyper faith in the good guy.
Yeah.
It's more common in younger people that are perhaps online more often and don't have as many points of reference, or haven't studied history enough to sort of ground the events around them. But as they move into the labor market and as they experience certain things, I think that will attenuate. So I think that's always going to be a minority. To answer your question, therefore, yeah, no, I think our culture not only could believe in virtuous power, I think it's desperate to believe in virtuous power. and now it's kind of beaten down and cynical because it hasn't gotten what it wanted. The left didn't get what it wanted out of Obama, perhaps, and that's almost forgotten. But that was like this weird messianic moment for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
hope and change.
Yeah, hope and change, exactly.
We didn't
Which
get much of either of those.
right, right, right. And America's not getting made great again either, on the other hand. But people do believe in it. I think that the question is, how does that happen? Does it happen through political institutions? Does it happen with a different political party? Just in terms of politics, and we can make the argument that it can't happen through politics, that what we need is like a cultural renovation that comes from the periphery of a society or whatever. But if we think in terms of politics, we have third parties and fourth parties and fifth parties in Europe. Our parliaments are kind of a circus. And you do get third parties coming up, like, in Italy, even recently, you had Fratelli get into power, and they were, runners up of runners up not very long ago. And so we have that in America, as I understand it. Your system would not allow for a third party to get anywhere. It's a fantasy. So you'd have to get a candidate, just focusing on politics, party politics again. You'd have to get like a cool candidate in one of the main parties, and that's I think a tall order. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Trump was like the chance of it happening, and it disappointed. Or maybe some people feel like it didn't disappoint, but that would be my perspective, is that it did disappoint. So I think in the United States, you would need it to be like this cultural thing, a kind of like rebellious MAGA or something like that. Yeah,
Well,
hard to envision what the blueprint would be for that.
that I think that's kind of the the questions that go up and down in the air. And what I wanted to bring back up is the hyperfixation on political solutions. I mean, that can happen. The revolutions of the 20th century, for to put it as succinctly as possible and as vaguely as possible, did something, good or bad. They did something. They did prove that political might can change a culture. Like I said, I'm saying that as a objectively neutral statement. You can top down change things. We also saw the end result of those things. And that to me seems to be the problem with a strictly political solution. Is, to me, it seems it's like trying to plant a tree and 100% dictate which way it grows. You can't change the nature of the tree. You maybe can guide it a certain way, but a strictly political view of things seems to me that you're trying to make the tree something it's not. It's not a great analogy, but it's why I believe I don't think anyone can change the world. I don't think you can magically improve things by any means, but I think there has to be a whole view of things. I think you have to have the individual with the collective as individuals working towards something, and I think that is where hierarchy comes in. I do think there has to be some sort of shared vision amongst the people of a nation to do anything that people can kind of see as non-destructive in an agreed upon direction. That used to be maybe religion in a culture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the solution is 100% everyone has to believe the same religion. That was kind of like the Catholic vision of things. But we don't even have that anymore. I don't know what we have outside of strict political power to unify people. And that to me is a great sadness.
Well, I think so I agree. Just in practical terms, once you know what you want, and I have my ideas of what I want, you need the political side of it. You need a political party that articulates this in a program with policies that are actually implementable, which is where, I think some people run into trouble, because what they want out of politics is this catharsis. You need something that can be implementable. But at the same time, you need think tanks and cultural institutions, and those have no connection to power initially whatsoever, and that's great. There's no problem with that. You can be a militant or an activist in non-political spaces as well. And then you have this completely free, open field, which is like let's see if I can conquer people's minds. Let's see if I can put something out there with some friends of mine or
Hmm.
whatever it is, and we connect with other people that have like-minded sort of projects, or they resonate with this, and we can really, let's see if we can put a dent in this culture and really, put something good and positive and our vision out there. All of those have to be happening, I think. The troubadour has to be doing his thing, but we also need the think tanks, and we also need the political parties vying for institutional power. So so there's that. Beyond
Which
that,
can happen. That can happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it can. I think it is happening. And I think, to answer your point about cohesion and how we don't really have it anymore, and how, we're kind of in a post-religious West. I think there's enough thirst for meaning and for, this very tired term, but I think it's a beautiful term, re-enchantment,
Yeah.
that you can create a kind of consensus generalis, a general consensus around certain basic ideas. And I think that is going to happen. Even if it's this organic growth that in some ways um, is novel and articulates itself through novel forms. It's always going to reconnect with the past, because what we have now is this weird generalized nostalgia. Like, everybody
Hmm.
wants the past back, and it's whatever past they're sort of imagining. But man, everybody wants the past back. Kids want to live in the 80s, and they're like 2 decades off of they were born in the 2000s. They have nothing to do with you, but they want it.
Hmm.
So that aura is great. I think that can be capitalized on. Even the background to, our live stream here, it's kind of got a,
Oh
sort
yeah.
of vaporwave thing going.
Looks like a
So
early '90s binder that someone would buy at Walmart or something.
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's that aesthetic, that 90s like wallpaper aesthetic that people talk about? It's
Oh, good.
Fugert, Arrow.
Something like
I don't
that.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um.
So yeah, people are
Well.
nostalgic about things like that even.
Well, to tie it all together, because you're the guest here, and I want to hype up as much as your channel as I can because it's fantastic. What did you consciously or unconsciously instigate that within your own work? Because you combine a lot of myth with the philosophical and the political comment. Not we don't even do commentary. You do something more than commentary. Analysis that you do is that you just. I mean, those things are inseparable. But I guess what I'm saying is, did you consciously know they were inseparable, or did it just come out through your art form?
I think it just came out. I mean, I think consciously I always sort of understood the best philosophical analysis to be grounded in literature and in myth. I mean, I was Plato talks about myths, right? Like, Protagoras presents his own version of Prometheus, and it's like nothing to do with the Hesiodic Prometheus, because whatever.
Great
But still
Prometheus
something.
video, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that one. But I say it's nothing to do, but then it is actually something to do, because that's the, philosophy starts off as kind of literature, as kind of these dialogues, right? In the Platonic sense of philosophy, in which we're expressing ourselves by means of images that are common to us. So let's grab this myth that we all know about, and let's, what's really going on here and what should be going on here. Plato is really doing the what should be going on here.
Hmm.
Like, there's the myth, but perhaps the myth is a bit uh, defective, that the poets have sort of tinkered with it a little too much, and the deeper meanings have to be brought out. And then the Middle Platonists and then the Neoplatonists really do that. So to answer your question, I think, yeah, always felt like those two were connected, not consciously, probably just
Hmm.
making videos out of what I'm interested in. I don't. I think, first of all, I don't know that analytical philosophy, um, uh, devoid of references to story, would do as well on YouTube, or do well on YouTube. Perhaps it would. I'm sure there's an audience for it, but I'm not terribly interested in that, and I don't think I'm terribly good at that. because it's it's a bit dry.
Well, thank God for it. I think there's too much of it actually. Whenever I find a lot of channels discussing world events or the modern world from a more right wing perspective, particularly, it all feels like it's just word cell philosophy, really heavy leaning mostly on politics. It's mostly commentary, and I can't stand it. I can't stand this idea of just this is basically grifting. This is whatever the thing that happened last week. Let's talk about it. Maybe put it in a frame from a philosopher from like 80 years ago, and put the channel out, put the video out.
Mhm.
Like that's ridiculous. It seems as shallow as a modern academic critique. It seems taking a worldview, shoving it into what is happening by the mug. What really, especially, I mean, your channel's always been great, but the Prometheus video you just recently put out, what was really striking to me about it, to circle back to it, is the multifaceted view you took of the Prometheus myth. Because I was really hoping for that, and you didn't let me down, because I've seen people commentate on that, and it's always Prometheus is just Satan equals modern leftism, and
Yeah,
that's not what it was. And like, okay, yes, there are big, deep archetypal thoughts and history connected to this figure that cannot just be merely reduced to modern day politics.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Yeah, no, I think Prometheus in particular, just to sort of dig in there, is bizarre for how prominent he became. I think political modernity so often, no, not political modernity, the romantics loved Prometheus.
Yeah.
So you have these odes to Prometheus, and they're very unambiguous celebrations of Prometheus, Byron and Goethe. I was surprised by Goethe, whose name I don't pronounce well, and I get comments from German bros. I know, I'm aware I don't pronounce it well, but I was surprised by how unambiguously sort of celebratory he was of the figure, a figure that is difficult to deal with. So I prefer Shelley, even though I don't necessarily agree with where Shelley takes him. But anyway, he became very prominent in our consciousness. And I think he's remained prominent in our consciousness in the West since the Romantics. They kind
Yeah.
of pick him up again. I don't know that he's prominent in the Middle Ages. I don't know that he's prominent in early modernity, but he becomes very prominent. Um, Obviously he's prominent in Greece, but then the fact that we're reaching back to the classic forms, in the Enlightenment and then in the uh, in the Renaissance and then in the Enlightenment, means that we pick up on these archetypes and we do something with them. Perhaps he was prominent in the Middle Ages in certain works, but I'm not really aware of it. Like if you read even after the Middle Ages, if you're reading sort of guys that are recovering a lot of paganism and casting it in a very positive light. I'm trying to think, like Ficino or Pico della Mirandola. They're not, to my knowledge, dealing with Prometheus. He's attractive because you're a revolutionary. If your project is to upturn, then he's attractive. The problem is he's wrong by the
Yeah.
standards of reality according to his own myth. Like he gets punished and he has to be liberated after a deal is struck with the Punisher, Zeus. He
Hmm.
doesn't like change reality. He fails. Reality is not what he wanted it to be. But then there's the rub. Like maybe reality is what he thought it was. It's completely up for grabs. Zeus is a tyrant, did deserve to be overthrown. He didn't get overthrown, but he could have been, because in the myth, Zeus himself believes he can be overthrown. Potentially, there's a prophecy, blah, blah, blah. So what makes him attractive is what makes him a failure, but a potential success. He could have done what he did, right? According to the centers of the myth. Now, the myth is incorrect. That's not how the divine works. That's not how the standards according to which reality is structured work. You don't overthrow them just because. It's not will to power or craftiness. Why did the Greeks make this guy? Now let's go like just going to Hesiod and Aeschylus, like the first ones. Why did they make this guy who's so correct We need fire. Humans need fire. We use fire. Nobody's not using fire because it was stolen. It's immoral. They were using fire for sure. So he was correct. And where is it? Is it in Aeschylus that he says that craftiness will replace brute force? You're not going to get to power through brute force anymore. That might have happened in the past with the Titans, but with the Olympians and moving forward, it's craftiness, it's intelligence. He's right. Like that's true. You need technology. You need to come up with stuff. So he's correct, and yet he's a failure. He's punished, and in a sense, he has to be reconciled to the divine by means of a deal that that involves him giving up the knowledge that he had. He submits to Zeus. He tells Zeus who was going to overthrow him so that Zeus can stay in power. So that's a very schizophrenic cultural frame. Like this guy's great and he's correct about a lot of things, and he's wrong, and reality will grind him down and he will end up submitting, right? So it makes sense that Plato does what he does with him. I'm very pro Plato, so I'm reading all of that stuff and I'm saying, yes, you're right. Hesiod is often some wild thing, and the poets corrupted the myths and all the rest of it. And we need good canonical versions of the myth, but we need to have those schizophrenic, weird versions too, so that we understand the mess of it, and then we can kind of reconcile ourselves to those by coming up with our own story. That's what the romantics, like, well, Shelley, really,
Yeah.
not the others. That's what they're doing. They're coming up with their own version of it. I'm not convinced by that. I think we should come up with better endings to the myth. But sometimes you get into these myths and you're like, wait, the canonical version of this myth it's not there yet. Somebody has to bake all these ideas into its final form is yet to arrive. That's for the future West. The reborn Europe has to come up with what this myth ought to look like ultimately, or
But
some artist should take that and put it together in verse or whatever it is.
but see, that's exactly what excites me about ideas like your channel and art in general is exactly what you just said, because tying it back together, most people, especially on a channel using a myth, comparing it to modern political problems, would reduce it down to a very simple bludgeon against their political enemies, when myths are so far beyond that. They're often contradictory. They're often schizophrenic. And I know it wasn't intentional to do this, but like there's the idea of the Disneyfication of the old parables and the old fairy tales. And I don't think Walt Disney was intentionally coming out with a message or an idea to sell to people. It's just like, look, let's take this kind of older story like The Little Mermaid. It's a little over kids' heads, especially modern kids' heads. So let's get rid of she wants a soul. Let's get rid of the sadder ending that she has to serve humans, and let's make it a princess story. I don't think it's that. But even with that, it's a great introduction maybe to the idea for children. And the same thing with taking a myth or taking a story or taking art and basically making it propaganda or a bludgeon. It's contributing to the whole downfall of society. You don't realize it, but when you contribute something, when you lie, even if it's not intentionally, when you take what you were kind of talking about with Prometheus, is when you go against reality and you rage against it, even in the slightest way. Like a lie is you trying to be God. It's you trying to change the world to fit what you wish had happened, even if it's in the mind of one person. If you can convince one person something not true happened, you've affected the world, at least in through their perspective. So all that to say, I hope I'm not rambling too much. The importance of the ambiguity of art, and if we have to say chaos in that sense, or potential of art, remains untapped. And that is like what I think why we need artists. And the big thing, especially for right-wing artists, is they're usually on Twitter or something complaining that they don't have patronage. And it's like, you're not going to get patronage. It's not going to happen. You have to create anyway. And like an Old Testament prophet, no one listens to you. You got no food. You got to go in the cave and let birds feed you for a while. Like it's just until you can talk to the king, and maybe his wife falls off a tower and gets eaten by dogs, hopefully. But it's this idea of all that to say, the bastardization of myth, the proliferation of political ideology, I think comes down to what is incentivized in our culture for people to do and talk about.
Hmm.
There's no monetary incentive to pursue the great myths or just pursue creating art for art's sake or pursue creating art that can challenge even your own political ideology. Because when you face art, when you face reality, you can't go in with an assumption. You have to go, it is a chaotic water in a chaotic sense. You have to go in, and part of you is going to come out changed. I'm not saying there's no truth. I'm not a subjectivist. I'm a Christian. I believe in objective truth. But truth is so big and massive, you're going to have to be humble before it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the golden ball in the water in that story with the frog and the princess. If you engage with the myth, you're gonna have to let it tell you what it's about first.
Yeah.
If you go in, as you said, trying to use it as a bludgeon, it's gonna be about the thing that the other myth or the other movie you reviewed was about. It's all about the
Mhm.
same thing. It's about my guys are good and your guys are bad, and we have to make it about the culture war issue that's raging. And there is this kind of sense of like allowing things to speak for themselves, and then trying to allow, actually probably what you should do as a well definitely what you should do as an artist is pray for God to guide your understanding of a thing towards the true, the good, and the beautiful, right? So that,
Yeah.
okay, this is fine, it's ugly, maybe it's broken, maybe where would the healing come into this story? What are we supposed to learn from this? What is this telling me about how I'm broken and how people around me are broken, and therefore how we can fix that? So
Well,
it,
that's
it
that's the that's the passion. What
exactly, yeah,
how
yeah.
does, especially in the old mind of things, the old Jewish or Gentile view, like how was God coming to earth to be broken and crucified? How is this God? And you see him whipped, you see him torn apart, you see him speared, and then 3 days later he comes back to life. And it's like, oh, he beat death. It's like, it's that, yeah, what you exactly what you just said. This idea of like this abstract incarnated, and it's not what you think it would be, and it's horrific, and it's even something that you yourself cannot really emulate. You kind of can, but I mean that's where in theology, that's where the Holy Spirit comes in. You have the actual being manipulating and going through you and acting as itself through you to become the full you. But I see what you're saying. There's that disconnect that will always be between what actually is truth versus what you can actually do with it and become.
Yeah, I mean so there's a few things there, right? Which is that as a cultural commentator, you have to try to, or as an artist, you have to try to take some material and see where it can be positive, where
Yeah.
where it can be sort of brought out. But I'm not convinced that what you're doing there is just making it up. I think what's happening there is that you're drawing out something that's genuinely there. If you stay with the myth or you stay with the story and you start to see where certain things come together, that's not pure creation out of nothing. That's telling you something about that myth, probably, unless you're being very spurious. Now, some myths are supposed to not make a lot of sense, and they're supposed to have something wrong about them because they're supposed to, I think, be an incentive to the listener who has ears to hear, because not everybody that receives the myth is going to do anything with it. But if they're jarring, to some people, maybe they're going to pursue that sense of there's something wrong about this. Wait, let me see. Hold on. What's going on here? And that's good. It's an
Yeah.
incentive. I find that with a lot of things. Like the divine is ever present. It doesn't go through change or suffer. And yet it has structured the world around us, well, as we experience it sequentially in time, in such a way as to reveal different parts of itself. And I think that happens with stories, that you don't want the story to be ready. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it has holes in it, then it incentivizes you to do something with it. And by the way, that doesn't have to be a problem. Like I'm making it sound like it has to be ugly so that you want to make it beautiful so that you
Yeah.
engage with it. And that's good too. We have those myths, the Hesiotic myths, but it can also just be incomplete. It can also be beautiful, but incomplete, you know? There was this idea of how in anthropology, people would often there was a trope that anthropologists would cite, and I don't remember the exact term for it, where many different societies, they tend to leave works of art a little bit open, a little bit incomplete. It's like putting tassels on the carpet. You know, you don't fully finish it. And there's like two readings of that. One is the standard reading is that it's kind of like if I make something too beautiful, the gods will destroy it, you know. It's I'm not meant to be
Or
challenging the gods.
Zeus will ravage it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They'll take the form of a swan and start to strut around or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A form of a carpet.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take some curves off of that carpet. But there's that. And also why you shouldn't praise people too much, or you shouldn't praise your kids too much because the gods might get jealous, that kind of trope. But then there's the other idea, which is that actually it's porous. It's open, not pessimistically out of fear that if it's complete, it's going to get messed up. You know, it's left open. It's left open because everything is supposed to be open. The ideal house isn't not supposed to have windows. It's supposed to have windows. You have to be open to the outside world. You know, like the ideal house is in an ideal neighborhood. It's not like floating in non-space or something. So we're supposed to be porous. And even like if you look at your face, like you have all these black openings, the pupils and the mouth and the,
Mhm.
you know, you're this weirdly incomplete creature, but it's not incomplete at all. It's complete. It's beautiful. It's breathing and it's receiving light.
I'm gonna clip you're a weird incomplete creature as my intro to describe myself and my artist. It's just gonna be you angrily saying you're an ugly incomplete creature.
It's like motivation or like yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but that was such a great line.
You know what? Yeah, I like it. I like it too. Yeah. It's you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, well, something not right here, you know.
I do that every morning anyway.
Fair.
My wife also does that to me. Like,
yeah, females. Yeah.
well,
But that was it. That was the complete thought, I think. Yeah, you've got those two different approaches.
I'm so glad you said that, man, because I've preached that on in artistic circles for so long, and I've thought about it for so long. I've gotten in trouble on X for saying it. It's this idea of first of all, the art and the divine are connected. If art were simply self-expression, and if we were from a materialist standpoint, then it would just be excretion. What can the materialist? What self is there to express? Nothing. But if it's connected to the divine, then it is incarnation, and because we're making it is incomplete. It can't be complete. The divine cannot be made complete by us. The only way we had the divine complete incarnation was God himself had to do it in the Western Christian tradition. So the idea and the idea of it being incomplete, or I would maybe refrain it as exclusionary. And the parables are like that. Like many people would not follow Christ and said, how can we eat this man's flesh? How can we drink his blood? Mm. It is meant to confuse. It is meant to bring a sword and divide. And that's a horrific thought for the modern world, that something would not be 100% inclusive in every sense. And that, no, there is a hierarchy. There are things that divide you and divide your soul. And that's what art does. The great faith, though, of art to the artist is that the art that divides is still healing, that it divides for a reason. And that, as you said, it's almost that you can't have a complete intellectual or rational view of art when you're enjoying it, when you're ingesting it, or when you're creating it. There's something before and above the rational self that must engage with art.
For sure, yeah. I think you know that when you want to create something, like when you have an inkling of an idea that feels beautiful and draws you into itself, you know you're not going to get there by thinking your way there. You're going to have to go into silence at some point and allow it to do something. At the same time, sometimes it feels like maybe by doing that, you're just kind of allowing your own random thoughts to do what they're doing. And if you bring in a let's say a very noisy mind or a dirty heart, to put it in kind of moralistic terms, man, it could be a great idea and it might really suck you in. It's gonna do some damage, though. It feels like it's kind of corroding you a little bit. So I believe in that, going into silence with the idea, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the Jungian dream play. I'm going to animate this image that's in my head, but you have to, I think, do that from a place of submitting to God,
Well,
because
that's
otherwise,
the holy of holies.
yeah, yeah,
You can't
go
you
into
can only
silence, like Jesus says.
yeah. Well, in the Old Testament, you can't enter the holy of holies without proper maintenance. You can't bring
Mhm.
an unclean thing within it. I mean, you'll be destroyed if you do. But again, if we want to extrapolate that, not only will you be destroyed, the community is destroyed, the world is destroyed.
That's right. Yeah, you will be destroyed. That, like, there is a kind of demonic Faustian pact that you make with the idea, like to bring it into the world. But if it's an ugly idea and you're making yourself ugly by spending time with it, you are destroying yourself. So maybe the high priest was zapped immediately. Good for him. You might put up with like 30 years of slow decline into like alcoholic artistic hell, and you're writing all these poems and everybody loves you, but like you're riddled with liver cancer by the end of it. So I think that does happen. We have different theologies. I'm more of a heretic. I interpret the incarnation not as the ho theos of
Mm-hmm.
John 1, ho theon, but theos, so that the absolute divine, in a sense, it is the ultimate self of every person. What Christ is this kind of like pedagogical center of history that reveals to us something very weird, which is that everything is sustained by the divine in every moment. And it's not just Adam that was created at the beginning and then it sort of runs its course. No, there's a second Adam in the midst of it. Okay, why? Well, because everything is the second Adam. You couldn't exist in any instant if you weren't sustained vertically by this
Mm-hmm.
thing outside of space-time. And so he's this kind of, the gospel story gives us that kind of narrative in which this is contained, and then we end up putting a lot of, well, it goes back to what we were saying before about the incomplete myth and sometimes the ugly myth, which is maybe a less interesting idea than what we were just talking about. But I do think whenever you get a beautiful revelatory idea that's going to change you and the world, you're going to get this beautiful cathedral, and then it's going to have gargoyles outside,
Oh
it's
yeah.
going to have like monsters, and the monsters are not supposed to be inside. They're supposed to be outside, because you got to look at the monster outside, because maybe he, if you're scared, you run away. So you can't bring fear into the inside. So it's supposed to be there for you to overcome. And if
Yeah.
you are able to overcome, great. Um, I
You
also
spoke
used to
about
think
that at
about,
length in the video that featured the Minotaur myth, the
yeah,
destruction of the beast man. Yeah.
yeah. That's one of my favorites, man. You're mentioning videos that I really liked. That one, I don't know that it ever got a lot of views, but I really like that
Well, it
video.
should.
I
I've been
agree.
trying to push you, man. Like I know you got on the. I saw you on the Jay Burden show, and I was trying to trying to push you on there for like a while. Like Jay, get this dude on. Like
That
stop
was
bringing
you.
on there. Like
Yeah,
yes. Like
right.
I tried to
I
get Brad. I got
remember.
Brad Kelly on there too. I was like, get these guys on here, man.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I remember for a while there was like somebody, I didn't actually know his show beforehand. And so I saw the mentions, and then yeah. That was a good conversation, more political. I think, from what I recall.
That's
Uh,
what his channel is, and that's fine.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, it's not a dig in any way. But but yeah. Yeah, so you have to have these gargoyles on the outside. And I think you also, I was thinking about like how to integrate myths in the context of, well, like pagan myths, okay, or gods
Mhm.
or whatever in the context of of monotheism. And I think that is a part of it. Like I think you're supposed to have these gargoyles outside, and you're supposed to have your heroes and your archetypes slaying the gargoyles outside, not the courtyard, like, outside the
Yeah.
actual temple. But then when you're inside, okay, things get a little more contemplative. And then when you're in the Holy of Holies, you better have done your homework, cleaned your heart. We're not talking about slaying dragons at this point. Now we're shut up. All right. Now you're in the presence of something, the mysterium tremendum. So I think of it like that because somebody was talking to me about Shintoism recently, and I love this idea. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, so you can bring me
Go
back
for it.
and tell me. And how like when the Japanese immigrated to Hawaii, they kind of had to set up their Shinto shrines, and they had to know what the local gods were, the local kami, local gods. So for Hawaii, they went with like the great king Kamehameha, or
Great name.
Kamehameha. Yeah. It's from, yeah, like the first time I read that, I was like Dragon Ball,
Dragon
like
Ball, yeah.
Goku. Like, oh, okay. That's what that's from. Okay, cool. Good to know. Or vice versa. Maybe he named himself after, he was a
He
DBZ fan.
he Landian forced himself into the past to be named after the attack. That's
Yeah,
what it
yeah.
was.
Was it hyperstition? Like the future comes into the
Yeah.
past. Yeah. And yeah. And then they went with, I think, Washington and Lincoln as the commie for the whole country. And they put them on the outside. Like if you're a Christian, or if you're a Muslim, or if you're a Jew, or if you're whatever, you're gonna say, well, that's obviously idolatry. Like we're not worshiping Washington here. Nobody's done that. America's a Christian nation. Everybody worships Washington, but nobody worships Washington. Like, no, you don't
Yeah.
worship him, but you worship him. But I think that's actually a legitimate thing to do if it's on the outside. Like I think if you put these figures, you put the ugly stuff, and it's kind of incentivizing you to grapple with it a little bit. And then you put the heroes out there too, and they're incentivizing you to, okay, be connected to the place where you are. By the time you get into the really sacred space, you're not anywhere.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be in America or anywhere else. You're supposed to be in the presence of the divine. But you are supposed to have honored the layers of reality that are able to sustain you. So yeah, honor America, honor Spain, honor Japan, honor your country, whatever it is. But that's on the first layer, or the second layer if we're coming from the courtyard. Yeah, I like that way of thinking about it.
Oh yeah, that hierarchy exists for a reason. Are you familiar with Jonathan Pajot's channel?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, first of all, he's done a video I think on gargoyles, and he does great on some symbolism. Again, I honestly prefer your channel over his when it comes to that, because I think I think his is just a little bit more focused on the algorithm right now, which is that's how he makes his monetary funds. Hey, whatever, that's a business, and he's doing good work. But he did that as well. He spoke of the idea of ordered hierarchy of ugliness and beauty, of the mundane and the divine, particularly in relation to gargoyles. But I think that first of all, whatever heresy that you may been to, I'll let it go because you speak Latin better than I do. So maybe there's a reason there. But
it shouldn't impress you. It's because I'm Spanish and my wife's Italian. So
man, I'm from the American South. We don't even speak English properly. So, and talk about idealizing lost goals or lost causes right here. Like we're awesome at it.
But I like your accent. I actually had a lot of American friends in school, and I used to get crap from them for saying that the Southern accent was actually, it sounds cool. They didn't they
There's an
didn't agree.
aristocracy to it. We had an aristocracy before the war, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
For some reason, all these wars that we've had from the Civil War to World War II are all about destroying any kind of sense of aristocracy. But we can go into that later. It's
Mm.
but,
Regression
but
of the castes.
yeah, well, and to tie that together, when you were talking about being vertically integrated and inseparable from the divine, I agree. I mean, that was, I think Paul mentioned with, and he was quoting a Greek philosopher who I forget, but it was, "In him we move and breathe and have our being." I agree. I agree with you on that point.
Yeah.
Second, and I'm going to bring this topic in because you did a great video on it. Um, I do think that separation we have in the modern world of the mundane and the divine, it's not an ordered hierarchy, it's just separate or gone. It's almost a Gnostic belief. It's almost a Gnostic thing that we hold. And I really appreciated your video on Gnosticism because that's another term, I think, particularly by James Lindsay, who, for good or bad, has done a lot of work. But he popularized that as a political weapon,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of Gnosticism. And again, as with the Promethean video, you did a wonderful deep dive into that, into what Gnosticism actually is, and showed, like, especially the medieval view, it wasn't this idea we have now of strict separation of the physical and the spiritual. It kind of gave birth to the scientific alchemy that we still use today. It's a much more complicated idea than what is being politicized now as a weapon.
Yeah, I think I'm not a fan of Lindsay because of some of his activism. You know, when he came out
Yep.
with this woke right term, which just means anybody who's critical of Israel. I thought, okay,
Yeah.
well, fine. His use, I think, of Gnostic is kind of like a popularized version of Eric Voegelin's use of Gnostic. And Vogelin turns it into a political category, which means that you do reject the world because you don't view it as a sign of anything higher, right? It's not a sign of God. It's not created according to some paradigm. It's not, you know, in Plato, you have the demiurge with the blueprint that he receives from above him, which
Mm-hmm.
is the autosoon, the this self-existent being, and then he creates the cosmos through that.
Yeah.
Actually, it's more complicated, and there's wonderful commentaries on the Timaeus because he has to create it through the feminine counterpart to himself, which is the receptacle. But the receptacle already contains the blueprint. He does. It's not just him that has it; she has it too. It's important for us not to be like the Aristotelian mistake is that, oh, the man has the seed, the woman just receives the seed. No, they both have seed, and from two seeds comes one seed, which becomes the human. It's like the divine plan was already there when you came to that substance, that land or whatever, with the divine plan. It's this weird thing, right? It's there waiting for you, even though you're the one bringing it. But anyway, I'm sort of derailing myself. Uh, I think Vogelin is correct. Whether he's correct about the use of the term Gnostic, I understand many different sects get labeled Gnostic. There's a lot of variety in the groups and their beliefs, and there's a lot of polemics against them. But the polemics come from Christians as well as pagans, and at least some of them were doing the thing, which is the world is nothing. It was created by an evil or incompetent demiurge. The real God is outside of the world. F the world, right?
Yeah.
Nothing matters. The moral laws we derive from conviviality in this reality mean nothing because conviviality in this reality means nothing. The fact that you exist as a separate body from me, it's all crap. So all of our moral systems have to be ultimately not very important and we can transgress against them. When you really devalue the world, physicality, nature, everything, which is the opposite of the ideal of resurrection that you get in, you know, in theology, when you really devalue it, it makes a lot of sense that liberation looks like violence, looks like transgression, looks like debauchery. You break it all down. And I think Vogelin he goes too far later on because he decides that even like Christian Neoplatonists were doing the thing, and you know, late antique, very interesting thinkers were wrong. Like for him, Gnostic ended up becoming way too broad. So
Yeah.
he went too far, from what I recall. but he's very brilliant. And I think that that does operate. And I think you can see it in this very specific way where we reflexively take a principle, a good idea, and we separate it from the world. So you're a member of a political community, politics, membership, great, has nothing to do with property.
Mm-hmm.
No, what do you mean? Why would you like think that being a member of this country means you ought to be able to own a house in the country, like a piece of the country, a small piece of the country to raise your kids in? Nope, not connected.
Mm-hmm.
Financial speculation, not connected to the real economy. Do what you want. Chase the bubble as far as it'll go before it pops and drain all the liquidity out of actually productive sectors of the economy. Go for it, King. Like, Icarus, fly. Well, that's what we've done. Like in very specific ways, he's right. There is this Gnostic take the principle, which is a good principle, but it's connected to something, real or some practice in the world, and then split the two apart. And there's no connection anymore between them. And then the detached transcendence, the false transcendence that detaches from immanence, becomes this kind of parasite that just sucks up energy and depletes everything around it, like speculative finance, if it goes too far. So I think I think that basic idea is super useful for understanding a lot of things, or at least for framing how things are going. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with the critique there of Lindsay. I observed his work during the woke era, but he lost me during whenever he tried to set up a dialectic between Christianity and America by saying liberty first, because people were saying Christ is king and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, I mean, you're doing the same thing that you spent years critiquing. You're setting up a dialectic between Christ and liberty. And to the Christian, there is no liberty without Christ. You're trying to set up Christians in America to be un-American. That's the end of your dialectic.
I didn't know he did that. Wow, that's very.
I'm not sure he even knew he was doing that, but that's what he was doing. And all that to say, no, and you had a wonderful. I don't know if you had a video about it or if that's what you spoke at length with Burden about. I think it was both, but yeah, the idea like the speculative market, the separation. That's just a microcosm of how we treat so many things, separating the abstract, the idea, from anything physical. And I mean, that's a debate raging probably all over Europe and America right now, but particularly my country with immigration is the question: what is an American? Is an American someone who believes in ideas or says they believes in ideas, or are they someone who is tied to something physical, tied to land, tied to history, tied to time? That's a hard, I mean, and to be fair of the more left-leaning position, in my country, that is a harder question to answer. We don't have 2,000 years of history to prove itself. And Lincoln imported a ton of Irish to fight in the Northern Army and gave them citizenship for it. And, for good or bad, whatever the outcome was, which probably my ancestors, for all I know, because I'm Welsh and Irish, supposedly. So I wouldn't be here. But yeah, it's a very dangerous game, is the separation of the physical and the spiritual in any sense. To tie it back, I hate the term because of the loaded, usually new age connotation with it, but holistic is the word that keeps coming back to me in a lot of sense of how reality should work. You cannot separate these things.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to have this the idea of incarnating the idea. The idea, if it's floating and it has no lower correlates, it's not real. Like a man has to go all the way down and all the way up, so to speak. You do have the angelic portion of you, and you have to have the physicality under you. And that's also why I think there's something psychological about owning land. When we deprive a generation in their 30s or 20s and 30s of the possibility of having their own space, we do a lot of psychological damage. We don't realize what we're doing there. Like, oh yeah, well, eventually it'll trickle down because no, those are the years they're supposed to be starting a family and they're supposed to have space around them. And I think you also get this. I mean, it's a very traditional idea. You have it with Chesterton and the distributists, the idea
Yep.
that people had to have a piece.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back a long way. Numa Pompilius, the king of Rome, semi-mythical figure, after he becomes king, he was a very wise guy, and they really wanted him to be king. He didn't want to be king. They asked him a bunch of times, and finally he was like, okay, fine, fine. But he took the land that Romulus had conquered and he apportioned it to the citizenry. So everybody gets a piece of land. It's yours. You can
Mm-hmm.
build a house and you can have a garden. And if you suck at it, I'm going to reproach you publicly. Okay. But it's
Yeah.
still yours. But if you're really good at it, I can tell you're a responsible guy and I'm going to offer you positions of responsibility in the city. And you have that in Leviticus, I think, where
Yeah.
like each tribe and family within Israel gets its own little portion, which is non-transferable. And Plato talks about that, his ideal city in the laws, not in the Republic, which the Republic is a bit oof, but the laws are better. And it's his final work. He's more mature. He's more chill. He was over in he was over in Italy. His plans didn't really work out. I think he's moderated, and he recommends this idea that households ought to have land. And you're talking about America not having as much history, but it's interesting because I agree with you. Like ancestry connected to citizenry, that's one of these fault lines that gets ripped apart. And if you rip that apart completely, it becomes a big problem, like finance from the economy or whatever else. But in America, there is this weird magical moment. As a non-American, I say this, so you can correct me and you can tell me where I should go with this. But in my opinion, there's this weird thing in American folklore, as I understand it, where everything becomes the product of the new people that are inhabiting the land. So, like Paul Bunyan actually carved a mountain, or this other guy actually dug up the Rio Grande, or the Grand Canyon is the result of this other folk figure. Like you get these folk figures that are maybe Scots Irish or Anglo, whatever, that are actually now the gods of the landscape, the originators of the land itself, the geography. It's different from whatever Cherokee god or spirit did it according to the Cherokee, right? It's the same mountain, but they're two different mountains. Like you possess the land by reimagining its origin according to your, making it in your image. You're supposed to do that, I think. I think humans are supposed to project themselves into the land in that way. That's actually part of being a steward, our responsibility to be stewards of nature. That's a spiritual responsibility, but it's also an imaginary labor that we engage in. We don't just till the land, we give it stories and meanings. And this is now about Paul Bunyan and his blue ox babe. That's what this land kind of evokes now, Yeah.
Oh, I agree. And quite frankly, if I say it rather uncouthly, whatever, but I think domination is part of culture. I think people go, I don't know. I'm not even saying that it's good or bad. It just is. When people go to a land, whether they took it or they didn't, it's yours now. And you are projecting your mythology, or, from the greater scheme of things, the mythology may be driving you in the spirits. It's in the idea of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And I think that was an old Catholic idea, was, no, we're going to go to Europe. We're going to take out the pagan gods and we're putting the cross up. Why? Because that's what Jesus said to do. It's like, okay, well, the only way you'd find a problem with that is by using Christian morality against itself in some degree, because that's what every person and every belief system has ever done. It's like, no, our gods conquered your gods. And I think almost all of human history, that's all it is. It's my God conquers your God. And that explains, to tie it all back together, I think that explains the downstream of culture and politics. To put it all together, it's one God versus another God. And that's it. And that sounds simple, but within that God is like the creation egg of everything. You crack it open, you've got culture, you've got politics, you've got everything. You've got a people. And you cannot separate that from land. You cannot just the sick bastardization of the money system, to separate it from gold. gold is, it's a finite element, and it's one of the oldest things we've ever appreciated, and is gold. And then to suddenly say, well, now it's just numbers on a screen. It on a cosmological level, that's sickening.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So you're a gold bug. I'm more
No,
skeptical.
no, I'm just saying the archetypical idea of gold is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That it has to be, that money has to be indexed to be the index of value, and
yeah,
not just this. I think it was Thomas Aquinas, I think, talks about that. He says, it's really supposed to be like the index. It's supposed to be like a notation in math. It's not
yeah.
supposed to be its own number, which came out of what exactly and corresponds to what exactly. I agree. I mean, the promissory note of future productivity is what people usually come up with.
Mhm.
But we're at a point where that's not what we're doing. We know that's not what we're doing. Come on now.
Well, like,
Um,
even debt or usury, whatever you want to call it, like you spoke at length before about the idea of the IOU being 5,000 years old. Well, when did the
yeah.
IOU start growing? When you write someone, I owe you 2 chickens. Well, like tomorrow, now it's 3. The next day, it's 4. It's like, it's a ridiculous idea. It's
Yeah.
it's an abstract. It's like somehow the chickens you've somehow cost me more chickens than the 2 I've given you, and now you owe me 6.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's supposed to be social constraints to that. Like
Hmm.
it's supposed to just not make sense for you to do that, because you would lose so much social capital in that small
Yeah.
pre-modern community that presumably, was doing this, and anthropology shows that it was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean the economy is a place where this Gnostic divorce becomes particularly clear. Um, when it comes to gods conquering other gods, I think also because you believe in a true God, not just a patron spirit of your people who is displacing the other people who have a different patron spirit, who's
Hmm.
obviously weaker because our swords are sharper and our,
Our
you know,
horses are faster. My
our
my
horses are
lobster too buttery.
exactly. So if it's not just that, if you actually believe that your God is the true God, you do tend to want to, of course, there's conquest, and conquest can be legitimate, um, or illegitimate depending on why it's happening. But I think the idea of baptizing that which you conquer comes in when you think there's a higher God that you're actually doing this for, right? So in Christian history, that's worked out sometimes and it hasn't worked out other times. Like I've always, because you can see in my channel, I
Hmm.
love paganism and I love the pagan
Oh yeah.
past, and I like the idea that, a lot of these figures, what needs to happen is that they need to be understood in the light of a proper understanding, a proper sense of the divine, which some of the people that originate these figures might have had and some might not have had. I think there could have been saints in these societies. In fact, I'm sure there were some, and I'm sure there was a lot of corruption in these societies, as there has been afterwards. But you can definitely take a figure like Odin, or a figure like, an ambiguous figure already in the Christian age, like Merlin,
Yeah.
or many figures from the Roman past, like Pythagoras or Numa Pompilius that I mentioned before, and go like, wait, hold on now. What they're really communicating is holiness. It is
Hmm.
actually an idea that is perfectly compatible with us, and perhaps at times that conquest as recognition of what is holy in what you're conquering and baptizing the rest hasn't always worked out, right? There's an ideal there, but I think that's also an ideal for the artist to take these ideas and then integrate them into a narrative where, oh dang, they fit together and we weren't fitting them together before. Yeah.
I 100% agree. I mean, I think that even someone on a holy crusade may see something, make a decision, writes off an idea, writes off a story, writes off a spirit that they didn't understand,
Yeah.
and to conversely with that, it may have been something they couldn't understand, and the point is, someone later could. going back to a parable or a myth that divides for a reason. And I've actually been fascinated with that. I know C.S. Lewis touched on that briefly from a Christian perspective with his stuff, um, examining the more pagan spirits, pagan ideas, and Tolkien did as well. But I think that that's a vastly untapped field. I think that that idea of to take those stories and not apply a modern lens, a presentism, or a Christian lens to them, and see what they are and see what they speak to you. And because my belief with religion has always been this, and this is a whole other story. I don't want to go on a tangent, but it's if your religion is true, it will reveal itself as true consistently, like reality does. I have found that it does in my life. And I think that, but I think that that is in everything. I think that if you go and you, let's say, explore the story of Merlin, of Arthur, which is Arthur, I believe, was a pagan idea before it was Christianized, and I mean, most of those things were. But you look at it and you see what is true, you see what is good, and you see what is beautiful, and you take that for what it is and the potentiality of what it could be beyond you. I think that's the problem, and I can tie all this together, especially with art. And I'd love to segue into art as a discussion, because there's very few people that I found that you can discuss art at this capacity with, because art now is meant to be sold. That's it, and that's how you know it's good, if it sells, and if it sells over and over. McDonald's is the best cheeseburger on the planet, apparently, because it sells.
Right.
Pizza Hut is apparently better than Italian pizza because it sells more. But the idea of seeking out the truth and the good and the beautiful of what it is, what it could be, you incarnate part of it, and it works with you. I've often described this idea of, you don't treat the muse like a whore. The muse was this idea that you are in relationship with something, and something bigger than you, and it may, quote unquote, may or may not need your help incarnating part of it, or it may just be that it's blessing you by letting you incarnate part of it, which I think is the better way to view it. But especially as a male artist, viewing the muse as a feminine force that you have to court and that you have to treat with respect, and that if you're lucky, again, you can share, you don't possess it. She already has the blueprint. You share a seed with to make something beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea that you encounter the truth that you know, because it is true, in different contexts, even as an artist, I think makes a lot of sense. I think you have a conscious idea, and as your whatever your creative process is, one thing that could work is like when you're falling asleep, right? And you have this creative idea, or this thing you want to do, this thing you want to accomplish. And it's kind of like the water, it's kind of like the light that's on the waters in Genesis, like an analogous to that. And so I think of the waters as feminine, and that's kind of sleep, the subconscious, It's great to go into the subconscious feminine with a clear masculine intention, a conscious intention.
Yeah.
Because it does something with that, like the subconscious, or sleep. Because if I say subconscious, it sounds like I'm like, alluding to like a bunch of psychoanalytical ways of thinking. No, I'm not, but it knows your idea, and it does stuff to that idea and gives it form in ways that you're like, whoa, like the next morning you might have some insights into it that are, that does happen. So and it goes back to this idea that the feminine has a seed as well. Yeah, you have something you want to do. For example, you want to make a baby. The feminine brings in its own seed to that, and is able to take you and does something for 9 months, and then, hey, there you go. So I think the same thing happens with conscious intention as light over those waters of sleep. And if you fall into sleep with that specific intention, incredible things end up happening. Like, shockingly, it becomes alive, and sort of that. But the creative process is a tremendous discipline. Like, real artists have to have this discipline where, which is why I don't really take the idea of the suffering artist who's a bit of a hedonist and whatever very
Oh yeah.
seriously. Like, you have to be a disciplined guy if you're gonna really do this. Like, God, even people that dabble in it, when it really works, it's like, damn, you're not doing a bunch of things. You're focused.
Mhm.
You have this very specific report with the muse that you're courting. And that's not like the easiest thing. Like, you could
Yeah.
act like a jerk and she could like leave, like you're not that special.
Yeah.
So
She
there's a
could just be
lot there.
moody that day.
Sorry?
She could just be moody that day.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Maybe
Well,
she wasn't amused. She was just,
well, she certainly wasn't amused with you, but like that description of
ah, well done.
I see bad puns are international, so there we go. It's
Excellent.
that description you gave basically of ocean waves of the waters of the deep is one I thought about a lot, and I may have expressed it some degree, but you have to almost have this classical view of manhood to go into it. You have to know, you like you said, you have to know your intention. You have to be able to maybe not even necessarily navigate the waters, but you have to have a tether to get out. Or I think that's where the archetype of the struggling or suffering artist comes from, is someone who gets lost in those seas, someone who's
Mm,
overwhelmed by them and does not have the capacity or skill or discipline to sort them. And it's floundering. You're not really diving, you're not getting treasure, you're not doing anything, you're just kind of floundering in the waves. And so I 100% agree with that. To segue, because you mentioned it, and not to self promote, but to tie it into art, the way we deal with that in our universe, the Godfo universe, a
mm.
rundown is that a metal has been discovered that can amplify intention. And what you said, like this idea of the sea of intention and the wrestling of it and the outside force, we go into depth a lot because one of our characters is able to see this wave, these seas of intentions all throughout the world. And what he realizes is that very, 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 very a percent of a percent of a percent of a percent of people are able to put forth an intention and it remain the same because it goes out within the sea and everyone else's intention is there. And what he calls God's intention is there. And most intentions just get buried and that
Mhm.
nothing becomes of anything. And usually most things are just lost in a swirling chaos. And that's where he goes and he encounters a figure called the monkey, which is the entire system of our world is technological, but at some point in the future, it's basically worshipped as magic because it basically is.
Mhm.
But she is a strictly more Nietzschean view of power and a
The
cynical view.
monkey.
Yeah, that's the character. That's what she calls herself, and she has this view of it's nothing but power. If you have the power to push your intent, to force your intent on the world, you change the intentions of others.
Mm.
And the flip side of that is that she's under this being they call God and she can't break out of it. So she kind of lives in this frustration of she has great power to influence the world, but not the ultimate power.
Right.
And that, like I said, I'm not trying to go in dive. I'm not bringing you on here to talk about my work, but what
No,
you, yeah,
I wanted you to
okay,
get
cool.
into it before, yeah.
Well, that's part of a series called the Black Star that we're doing that takes place at the very end of our universe. The one we're doing, the comics we're working on now is Apollyon 20XX, which tells the story of how this metal landed on Earth and global elites snatched it up. It's kind of the conspiratorial idea, but they're creating their own god, mixing that metal with an AI with a person so that they can broadcast intention over the Earth. At the end of that series, something like that occurs and Earth is reformed and reshaped in the image of this new God that can broadcast its intentions. So
Mm.
anyone who opposes that God is labeled God foe. That's the pop culture MCU description of it. But what we try to do is interrogate these ideas, and the main question is: can man be a godlike figure? Can man assume intentional control over the world and other people?
He can, I think. I mean,
That's the
he
interesting debate.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, if conscious intention affects reality,
Yeah,
and it does, what about sinful conscious intention? What about conscious intention that's destructive? Like this
yeah,
is something you could run into in the Gospel of Mark. In Mark 11:24, Jesus says, if you pray, believe that you have received your prayer and it will be done for you.
yeah,
Well, what about a guy that's sinful? What's going on there? Well, what's going on there is that he is destroying himself. He's condemning himself. I mean, you can if you desire a bad thing, bad things happen. You become bad. It's not. So I think that at the end of the day, you can absolutely shape reality, and yet the fact that reality is real, it can imagine itself as unreal. Like that's a weird quirk of reality, is that it contains its own negation, but
hmm
it can never fulfill that. Like you can imagine non-being, but you can never consummate non-being. You can imagine a squared circle, or like 1 + 1 = 3, and kind of convince yourself there's some weird logic by means of which that's true, but it's not. It's not true.
can I run with that real quick, because that has
Yeah.
exactly been the description I've tried to understand of the satanic figure of Lucifer, this being that rages against that which created it, but is held together by that which it hates.
Yeah.
And that seems like hell. That seems like ultimate pride. Is this, if God is ultimate love, ultimate good, and you hate that, and you actively every second of every meat part of existence rage against it, it would be better for you to not exist, to be eradicated, to be destroyed. The hell would be to continue to exist in subservience to the thing you hate that holds you together.
Which is reality itself, or the
Yeah,
source of reality itself. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of like asymptotically approaching non-being.
yeah.
William Blake talks about that. He
Oh
for
yeah,
him, Satan, yeah. He's like the farther limit of what you can do to stop existing.
yeah,
Um, and I like the idea that Dante Satan as this kind of frozen creature, because at the end you end up in complete motionlessness in the negative sense,
yeah,
like the all of your possibilities narrow into nothing, or from a different perspective you just dissolve outward. But either way, you're kind of stuck in this kind of state because you've rejected reality, you've desired unreality.
hmm
uh, you really would like 1 + 1 to be 3 for some stupid reason, but that's at odds with your own. Since that's at odds with your own existence, since as you said, that means that you're in this tortured state of hating the very thing that keeps you together. You don't really desire it. That's
yeah,
not really your desire. Like your desire, actually what's compatible with your nature is not that. So you're at odds with yourself.
yeah,
Right. I think Augustine says that it's like being a saint or heaven is when you're no longer capable of sinning.
yeah,
You can't do it. That's a narrowing of your possibilities. No, actually it's complete freedom,
yeah.
because sin was always something other than what's natural to you anyway. It was always like putting acid on your skin. It
Well,
dissolves you.
well, do you think that's in the Christian tradition and the worldview? That would be a reason Christ would call Satan the father of lies. I know we kind of think of that as like an ontological lies come from him or whatever, but it's like no, this is the being that embodies ultimately lying to itself at all times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, 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 exactly. It's deception, and ultimately he's deceived because that's why he's in that state. Or, the earlier Jewish version of Satan, where he's a servant of God and he
Yeah.
deceives you to test you. Um but it
I would
does.
love your opinion on that. Like I'm not to interrupt, but I would love, if I could make a request, I would love a video if you could do a deep dive, if it intrigued you, on the rampant and beautiful legality of the Jewish worldview, especially the Old Testament, because everything cosmological in their worldview has a legal view. And I'm not saying in the Protestant legalism view of Judaism. I'm saying like no, like this seems to be how they believed the world and the universe was structured.
Yeah, and Satan is the accuser, and
Yeah.
then Jesus kind of, I'm not sure if the gospel coins the term paraclete for the advocate or defender,
Hmm.
usually interpreted as the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
so that you very much have the advocate, like the defense lawyer, and Satan as the accuser. It's two images, I think, because they also use debt a lot,
Yeah.
and debtor's prison, and
And
it's
the
kind of like
law.
the, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that is interesting. I mean, I think ultimately, since human since consciousness is more since consciousness is primal, is more fundamental than what seems to be non-conscious. Human categories and institutions are imagined to be more fundamental than just tooth and claw nature.
Yeah.
So there is a legality, there is a fairness to this life, right? If you align with it, there's a way to play life where it's fair,
Hmm.
but then there's a way to play life where it's torture and you're completely off the rails and you feel like everything is unfair. Um, so they
And you
stay
have to wonder
within,
where that sense comes from of fair and unfair because it's so ingrained in us.
yeah, I think it's inherent to us.
Yeah.
I think absolutely. I think that's inherent to us. I think you can blunt that, but I think that's part of what the human condition. I mean, I think it has to be. People say, "Well, no, it's inculcated," but that's kind of missing the point because a lot of what's inherent to you has to be inculcated in you. Like if you were left alone and no one raised you, you wouldn't speak language. Basically, you might bark, but language is definitely inherent to humans. We do it. Like we
Yeah.
create complex grammars. Yeah, you have to learn a particular language from your parents. It's not going to happen on its own, but it is inherent. So I think definitely the sense of fairness is inherent to the human being, but you have to learn it. It has to
Yeah.
be taught to you, and therefore it can also be distorted by people around you, and societies can end up having a very twisted understanding of what's fair. Like you sacrificing a dude because the sun won't come up. I don't know. Like, yeah, you can do that. You can twist it up, but
But
it's inherent.
to your point about an evil man praying to receiving his own evil,
Mm.
that is to on a societal scale. I don't think people sacrificed people and did not see results of some kind. I don't think they did something because the more modern view is that they were stupid and primitive. And it's like these people survived really harsh conditions and built societies from nothing. I don't think that they built religions out of nothing and out of stupidity.
Mm.
You see what I'm
Y-
saying? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you think that they had pacts with demonic entities that delivered on their promises?
that would be the Christian answer. I'm open to a number of answers, but
Mm.
my curiosity is I don't think large swaths of humans did something like that for nothing. I don't think that I just refuse to believe they were stupid.
Yeah. So I think faith moves mountains, and I think bad people's faith can move mountains
Man, it's like
as
that's a
well.
hard line, man. It's like a Dostoevsky line. Bad people's faith can move mountains.
But they get crushed by the mountain in the end.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to get. No,
No,
you actually gave
we're
me.
just gonna do a hard edit of that first one with the
Yeah,
flaming
yeah, yeah.
eyes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's good that you gave me that pause. Like you were like, "Oh, that's a good line." So then I could come up with like a way to, um, you know, yeah, yeah. They get crushed by the mountain. But what I mean is that like also you they definitely get crushed by the mountain. But if they're moving it for selfish or whatever idolatrous purposes. But the thing is like it's that, yeah, faith moves mountains, but then there's this mechanism in the human mind that comes in, I think, where you start to think, you know what, last time I did this, um it was this day of the week, or I saw a bluebird, or my neighbor, or whatever. Like you create very, very quickly superstitious systems around that very quickly. And for some reason, those superstitious systems are always in the end about quid pro quo. I have to offer something to anticipate the bad so I don't get the bad, or I get it, but in a way that I control. And I offer this thing to fate, to the gods, whatever. And that way, this operation is going to work out, you know? That OCD thing, all cultures do that to some degree. They end up there. And I think that's what's going on there. Like the let's say the monotheistic gambit is you don't need to do any of that. Don't desire bad things that'll destroy you, but you don't need to do any of that stuff. You just need
Yeah.
to go to the divine and ask for provision and get provision. You don't need to look out for the bluebird, do the superstitious thing, and then 2 generations later sacrifice a guy because of the like. That's not necessary. That's not how reality works. But it is, for some reason, how the human mind works. And I think what's going on there is that you're marrying a higher imperative of, I have a very strong belief this is going to happen, and it ends up happening, to a lower calculative psychological mechanism, which is bartering and, you know, other things. And so because they're not detached, because that lower part is like on hyperdrive, it pollutes the higher spiritual impulse, and you end up with Aztec temples or
Mm,
whatever it is. And what happened with the Aztecs, for example, just as an example, is they completely collapsed, like their faith collapsed.
yeah.
They saw something so weird, you know, that their chronicles, the Florentine Codex says that they saw that they were mountains were floating in the sea. That's what they called ships.
Yeah.
And you know, half what is
Half
it?
man, half horse. Yeah. Or half
Yeah, but they
beast.
didn't have a word for horse, so it was like
Yeah.
half llama or something. Like, you know, and initially it was very bizarre what they were seeing, and it caused their system of belief to collapse. They picked it up again, and Moctezuma for sure. Like, you know, there was some pushback, absolutely. But I think there was a shock. I think that was a really shocking moment.
Well, to tie that, just to run on to chase that rabbit, so to speak. I mean that happened with the Jews in 70 A.D. The final destruction of the temple, as far as we can say, the final. But to tie that back to culture and the Gnostic problem, like what's left to shatter a culture and shatter a man like that, because it's not tied to the land, it's not tied to culture, it's not tied to systems anymore, it's not tied to um a temple, a place. How, and maybe that's a self-fulfilling problem. Maybe that is why man is already shattered. Those things don't exist anymore because there is no tie.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to be tied to a place, but you're not supposed to turn that place into an idol. And I think that's what
Yeah.
ends up happening. And if that happens, then you get humbled. So I
Do you,
think what ended up happening, yeah,
well, I've just thought of this. Like, do you suppose the modern man's answer is talking? I mean, that's the kind of word cell joke or philosophy cell joke. It's heady and it's abstract. Do you think that action, buildings, physical aspects would be the better way, I guess, to change man's heart than mere words or thought?
yeah, beauty, you know, beautiful environments, giving them a beautiful vision. So like saying to people, listen, you can be a part of this thing.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be. I mean, I do think it should be connected to something local so that they can, you know, not just look at images on X or watch YouTube videos about it. Like, I think it should be something that they can really connect to their neighborhood and to physical space around them. But yeah, beauty. That's why you get all these people posting Art Deco and being like,
yeah.
"You know, we need an Art Deco
Some guy,
revival."
some Indian account pretending to be a Hellenistic account.
Right. Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly.
you
As
got
soon as
you,
it works,
you had the most appropriated culture from India is Italy. Italy is the most appropriated
for real.
Indian culture. I didn't mean to
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
interrupt, but that's such a funny observation.
It's like how many statue slop. I had a statue avatar, but it wasn't that kind of statue avatar. I like
It
the
was
thing.
it was the Trump Golden one from this week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You brought it
It
from the
was just
future.
it was pure AI slop. It was God Emperor Trump, and he was a Greco-Roman statue, and he had a I don't know, an American star behind, like flag behind him, but it was Warhammer somehow.
it was it was Babe, the red, white, and blue ox.
Yeah, exactly. He's Paul Bunyan but he's back and he's pissed off. Now it's personal.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. We're
I don't remember.
Indians and Art Deco and yeah, culture. Yeah, we got to make it beautiful. Yeah, we got to
Yep.
offer people beauty. I think that's what it's. I mean, I think at the end of the day, people want to be part of something beautiful and they want to live in beautiful environments, and you can definitely offer that to people. Whether it's through the private sector, public sector, or just like independently, and then trying to sort of get something off the ground. But that kind of thing should be like think tanks and political parties ought to have a little bit of time for that kind of beautifying the environment thing. I saw a while ago. I saw like a video. I think it was a YouTube channel, and it was showing. It was a YouTube channel. What was it called? School of Life, I think. And it,
Mhm.
it showed you how beautiful streets are when all the houses are the same width and height. And then they have like a specific feature in common, but then within that, everybody decided everything else differently. The
Mm.
colors and stuff, right? Like you have uniformity, but then everybody kind of went their own way with it. And they were showing like certain Dutch streets in wherever it is, or Flemish cities, uh, which are very beautiful, some of the most beautiful in Europe. And yeah, that's what it is. It's this balance between what we have in common and then what we get to do to express our creativity. That's
Yep.
what being a member of a community is, right? And if you offer people that, I think definitely housing, so important.
Yeah.
Late 20s, they're starting to think about having a family. Make it possible for them to buy a house at some point in the foreseeable future. Don't kill the human heart with this housing crisis that we have. I
Yeah.
always
I don't think BlackRock needs any more houses.
Yeah, I think they're good. Exactly.
Well,
I don't think
I
private
think that
equity. Yeah,
I think
for
that
sure.
description you gave of conformity, or to some degree, or maybe I should architecture with the individual, is that wonderful. Like going back to the male and female idea. If you have a male structure, you can have feminine energy and feminine power flourishing. If you have order, you can have chaos in a proper sense. I mean, that's a fire. You build a fire. It's the ancients. It's this
100%.
weird spiritual element, this thing that comes out of nowhere when you rub sticks together or have heat and friction, but it's uncontrollable and it's not tamed, but it is confined, or I prefer the word incarnated. It is
Yeah.
it is that, and I think that's what art is, man. And I think we've just, I mean, we've got the Bugman meme. You've got all of these things that people can look at and we can talk about. But I agree with you. I think it's action, doing, providing, and to tie it back around. I mean, that's what I love about your channel is you're trying. It seems like you're trying to actually make something and build something beyond a monetary commentary channel. And as an artist, that's what I think is beautiful and the world needs. And to go back to this idea of innate nature of man. I mean, that's I just put out what's called the Biophile Codex, which ties with our comic Biophile Kolga, and it's her writing describing the beginnings of their initiative. And they live in a under a literal demiurge, this godlike thing that no one sees, but I mean, you can't deny it. It exists, and its voice goes out through the world and influences the minds of everyone. It is a totalitarian system, but it's not like 1984. It's just, it is a thing above everything else. And
Mhm.
it holds the world together. And she realizes that they realize, like, you can't remove this thing. It is the highest order of this materialist view of the world that they have. But she has these long rambling questions of why do I feel, why is there a nature within me that contradicts it? If this
Mhm.
is the defining characteristic, this is the capstone of the world, what is this thing that I can't articulate, but I know that's not the fullness of man?
Mhm.
And that's the kind of questions I want to explore in art. And that's the kind of, like, that's why I enjoy about the work you're doing. And I think the world needs that kind of work. Is we're well past commentary. We're well past critique. That's the last thing the world needs right now is commentary and critique on what has already been done and made. I don't need to see another anti-woke YouTuber like talking about the girl boss, talking about what,
Yeah.
oh, things are ugly. Wonderful. Then go build something beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think the time uh, we would give a lot of attention, a lot of time to people really putting a good creative vision out there after they have that critical mass. That's
Yeah.
the problem, right? You have to get that critical mass of people to look at you because you're nobody initially. But once that's there, I think there is a thirst for it. I think a lot of people do want that. I think there is also a little bit of fatigue, critique fatigue, like you're saying, this commentary thing that we've been doing. It seems like we've been doing it for a long time. Like, I mean, yeah, YouTube and the internet, it was very wild for a while and you had really weird stuff going on. And then it kind of all narrowed. And that's the really insidious aspect of woke is that it turned us all into kind of morons. Like we're just reacting to it in the same terms, and it was so fresh initially.
Mhm.
But now we're all doing the same thing, and I love those. Some of those channels were great. Like I had a lot of fun with them, and I still think they're pretty fair and they're great. I know people that watch Critical Drinker, no shade at all, wonderful, great, wonderful, but also I don't even know if he still does the anti-woke criticism thing or he just does movie reviews. Maybe he just does movie reviews, which is also, very legitimate.
Yeah.
Um, or I mean, I mentioned that one because that one's the big one. That one really got big very quickly, it
Because
seemed.
of Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah, because of Star Wars. Yeah, that's what it was. And then it had like a second life with the Disney remakes. All these
Yep.
Disney remakes of like old stuff, man, like hating on that was lucrative. That's what I should have done for Europos, just like do videos reacting to Disney. Um, and they deserve to be reacted against and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I'm not against that. But I think that there is a certain fatigue. The problem is that it's a lot easier to consume that content once you're primed for it than to consume a good story or read a book.
Yeah.
Initially, you're lazy. I think we have become very lazy, not only as creators, but as audiences. We have
Mhm.
kind of gotten lazy. So we have to get our attention back and we have to focus up a little bit. But if an idea is really fascinating, it captures you. Like there
Oh yeah.
is discipline in the reader, but then there's also the fact that when you find something you really love, the discipline just comes. Like you just focus on it and enjoy consuming it. So
I 100% agree. This is what my artist, because I'm a writer. I can't do physical art. I tried drawing as a kid. Something you have a moment of lucidity even in youth, and you're like, oh, I suck at this. This isn't going to happen.
yeah,
It's like
I
that.
know that feeling. Yeah, yeah, with
Yeah.
drawing for sure.
It's it's why neither of us are WWF stars, right? Or WWE stars, whatever it
Right,
is.
right, right,
So,
right.
um, but we talk about that a lot. It's
You
like,
shouldn't have mentioned WWF with me, man. Like that's a rabbit. Like I'll start talking about storylines,
oh,
Undertaker. Like I'll go down that road, man.
the the Euro poor and the redneck. Yeah. That's what the establishment fears.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. White Trash International for
There
sure.
you go. We'll get the Japanese in on it too. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but but
They
this
love wrestling.
and they're amazing at it. They're just not
Yeah,
300
yeah.
pounds.
It's
That's the
different
problem. It's like it's
for
the same
real.
problem
Yeah.
with baseball with them. They don't have enough steroids to make the Mark McGuire. So,
Right.
but this idea, we Josh and I talked about this idea of, remember when things like art consumed you, when there were things like when I was a kid before the movies, but this was like in the 80s and 90s. Like I read Dune and it blew my mind,
Yeah.
and it just good art, as we discussed earlier, to put it very simply, because I love using simple terms for myself because I'm a moron, and for anyone who would watch or read, art changes you and it forces you to change because you have to engage with it. And when you engage with it properly, like, again, you're in an ocean, you're in a primal thing that it surpasses you. It's going to erode you and build you in some way. And I think to sum up all my problem with more the anti-woke thing or Gamergate stuff that came out is that's it wouldn't get to that point. Is that we can complain about the peripherals, we can complain about the symptoms. The main thing is that good art changes you, and this isn't good art that's being made.
Yeah. How do you make art that changes people? I think you just make art that you really love,
Hmm.
that I think that takes you on a journey as you're making it, right? That changes
Yeah,
you as the creator of it, and then maybe it catches people. Because if you have a need for something, it might be that that need is more generalized in society than you think initially. So, I mean, I wonder. I mean, part of this is also like, okay, what specific storylines and patterns and archetypes have we sort of lost in mainstream movies, in mainstream TV, and how do we get it back? Like, just to be trash. Okay, I'm just gonna be
yeah.
trash. When I was a kid, man, I loved Mortal Kombat, and I loved the Scorpion story, and how,
Yeah.
okay, he lost his family, went to hell, he came back. It was later that I realized, oh man, this is Katabasis Anabasis, descent into hell, ascent,
Mhm.
redemption. Great, that's why I love it. So now I love that Aeneas went down the cave, and now I love, that Odysseus talked to the dead. But I loved it in Mortal Kombat first, because that's what the context I was in.
Because it's
Um,
cooler.
it's pretty. I don't know if it's cooler. Come on now, Aeneas founded Rome, but
But did he have a skull head that could breathe fire?
he did not do that. He didn't do that. That's true. Didn't have a chain that he, like,
Yeah, how
threw
many
out at
spines
people.
did he rip out?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. What was his fatality? I mean, he had one.
Uh, I know at least that it was Mortal Kombat 1 or 2. He would take his mask off and burn someone with the
Burn. Yeah, yeah.
hellfire. Yeah,
The fire would come out. Yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah. I'll do a Mortal Kombat video at some point, man. That just like nerd out completely and lose like half my subscribers.
you
Uh,
should commission Mortal Kombat covers of all your ancient texts, like all your classical books.
So we should do somebody should do using like slightly retro pixel art, like a fighting game with only like classical heroes
Oh
and these
yeah,
kinds of mythical, like it would be amazing. And you could have like a storyline that comes up, and uh, you know, end credit like sequences that tell people about the myth. Like it is actually ridiculous that we've not made any pop culture or video game canonical versions of
yeah,
some of like the great stories, giving them a spin. Like, you don't even have to do it like in a slavish way. You can do your own thing with it, but there's so much material there that we don't use, and like cartoons as well. Now, because I'm a dad and sleep
oh,
deprived.
congratulations.
Thank you. But I'm thinking about, well, when the kid's old enough to watch cartoons,
Hmm.
what cartoons are we going to be watching? Like, what are we going to be doing here? Because a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff out there, and the cartoons I grew up with, I don't know what cartoons you grew up with, but I grew up with slop. Some of it was great, but some
Oh,
of it was very
I
bad.
had Batman the animated series. I had
Oh
Spider
yeah,
Man.
yeah, I
They
had
were
that.
pretty good.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. But there was a lot of weird Cartoon
Hmm.
Network nonsense and Nickelodeon
Nickelodeon.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Nickelodeon was
Well,
like, oof, yeah.
yeah, man. Now we know why.
Yeah, now we know why. Exactly.
Well, my children, 5 and 3, we
Whoa,
started the
nice.
5-year-old. Yeah, and we're still not sleeping, so there's that.
Don't
We
tell me
st-
that.
yeah, like I didn't earn the dad bod by not being a dad. Like,
Right, right. But this explains the dad humor from before. The muse wasn't abused. Man, I'm
yeah.
still reeling for that one. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to blame the lack of sleep and not the American food on what I've got going on. So you might be all right, wink, wink.
Okay. Okay. I
But
gotta chug olive oil in.
just walk a lot and drink wine, whatever it is you guys do in Italy. Like,
That's pretty much what we do. That's it. I don't drink wine. I don't drink, but everybody else.
I don't either. It makes me dehydrated. I but we started with Totoro, with my 5-year-old and at 2, and she loved it. It's great, beautiful images, no plot, and it's cozy. And they loved The Cat Returns, which has a little bit more of a plot, but those Ghibli films they've just absolutely loved. And it's like because
That's
I
crazy that
can't.
you said that.
Oh yeah,
We've had my neighbor Totoro playing like in the main room
yeah.
for weeks
Oh,
now. Like when she comes.
that's all she would watch. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, 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 that's crazy,
And the
and the
music's
song
great.
the music's great. Actually, because 'cause I'd never watched it. Watching it now, I just the other day where I was having my coffee in the morning, and it just hit me. Did you ever watch South Park?
Yes.
Yeah, it just hit me when I was having my coffee. This is the Cthulhu song. The
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is what that is. It just like, oh, right, that's why it's familiar. Yeah, yeah, it's Cartman on Cthulhu, like,
yeah.
singing about killing his friends or whatever. Yeah.
No, no, Totoro's a staple in our house. I taught my daughter to play part of the theme song on piano. Um, we did Legend of Zelda with her. Actually, we started with Wind Waker. I've got video games like I inherited from my deceased brother. I'm not a big gamer. I don't have any of the modern systems or anything like that. But I was like, I bet she would like Zelda. Like that's got some great storytelling, great stuff, and she loved the Wind Waker. But we limit screen time and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
we've been in the same boat. It's like what is there to watch for a child that's actually good? And we thought about because my son likes Superman. He's 2, of course he likes Superman, right? We were gonna watch The Incredibles with them, but we watched like the first 10-20 minutes. I'm like, I'm not letting my kid watch this. Like,
Right, right,
and
right.
it's not the anti woke stuff. It's just like it's not. This is just fast food for the soul, you know.
Mm,
It's
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of I often yeah, I have this kind of like envy when I watch Studio Ghibli stuff. Because like it again, it seems at least that they took their context, even like some Shinto stuff and folklore and all the rest of it, and really made something beautiful out of it. It's like that's here in Italy or in my country, in Spain or anywhere in Europe. Like we do not romance our own folklore, and we have so much of it. We could do a lot with this, but there's no animators, no studios, no interest. Like for sure, this would have a public,
oh yeah,
if but it's kind of like it's like this weird desire to always look at something else or look at something distant or foreign. And for us, it's mostly American culture, which is
hell
which is
yeah.
what people want to look at, but yeah. And that's I grew up with basically 90% American culture. But yeah, at a certain point, your artists have to take an interest in this kind of stuff, but it takes money. So I do like I'm not against subsidies for this kind of thing. Like if we
Oh
had
yeah.
a Studio Ghibli doing stuff like that, give them subsidies, give them
Hmm.
some of that,
But
cut
it's
something
got
else.
the unspeakable word though. It's got a nationalistic bent to it, and
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure you know Akira, the anime and the manga. I mean, that is, my goodness, that is 100% a repudiation of the American empire and neoliberalism in general. It's like, no, if Japan had
Yeah,
the power to take over and govern ourselves, we would and we should. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what's his name? Studio Ghibli, Miyazaki.
Miyazaki.
That yeah, that was his intention with Totoro. He's like he was tired of seeing non-Japanese ideas and non-Japanese media, and he said, "I'm gonna make a Japanese Shinto-inspired anime." Book of Kells did that in Ireland, which is that's
I
that's
love
a
that
great
one.
one
Yeah,
for kids. Yeah,
great
and
one.
that whole trilogy, and it again like what you're saying, like what that shouldn't be a rarity. That's we shouldn't be able to count these things on one hand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think things kind of go underground for a while, and then they come back up in a weird way. Like there's eras that are more interested in the past or in a particular part of the past, and I do want to believe that we're coming up to an era of more interest in
Yeah,
specifically folklore and connecting to this kind of thing. Not only that, like we said, there's the '80s nostalgia, there's the Art Deco thing, there's all kinds of stuff, but that kind of little bit of a cozy feeling of going into your folklore and to your stories. And half of them are super creepy and whatever. Like there's so much there. There's so much to talk about. But how do we do that? Because AI is a weird thing because you're going to have AI involved in this. In fact, you could kind of already do this with AI if you really spend some time. You could use AI to make a weird maybe a film in which like everything is a close up.
Hmm.
But yeah, you could do it. But the problem is, I think that there is this weird return of like labor theory of value. Like people
Yeah.
are not going to value this if it even if it looks great and the concept is great and the script is great, they're not really going to connect to it the way you want them to, like spiritually. They're not.
Hmm.
They're just going to be like, ah, yeah, yeah. You just prompted it into okay, who cares? Like there's something about Studio Ghibli or whatever, or Book of Kells. Like okay, a guy did that though.
Hmm.
It's there's human labor. We value that now more than ever. It's weird. It's like, Walter Benjamin in the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. He said, well, the aura of the original art piece doesn't really matter anymore because you can reproduce a painting infinitely. Everybody can see it in detail at home. Like, why would you go? He doesn't exactly say that, but I'm caricaturing his points.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, actually, people care about the aura. They want to go
Oh
see the
yeah.
Mona Lisa physically. Like, so same for this. You need somebody to like do it.
They want to
Yeah.
see the Mona Lisa. They just don't want to get stabbed in the street on the way to see it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah, man. No, we're in a state over here. We are in a state. Our cities are in a state. That's
Well,
another. That's a whole other topic. But yeah.
yeah. I knew Dolly. I knew his work. Went on our honeymoon to his museum here in Florida. Blows your mind. You would not
Right.
believe a human being could make that. You couldn't believe a machine could make it. He had, I'm sure you know, but he had the clock painting. I don't know the name because I'm an ignorant American. The clock painting is like
No,
this big. It's tiny. And then he has this 2-story painting of an angel on a horse. And it's like, and then you realize like this dude he wasn't some deconstructionist. He was just ungodly talented and did everything.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
also supported Franco, which is a nice ad.
Yeah. 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 Dali was he was based in all kinds of ways. He was also probably a bit of a degenerate in other ways, but he was great. And I think Dali is a great example of like alternative. You got like an alternative route for modernism to have gone down, where
Mhm.
like it wasn't all this nonsense of black square on red square or urinal in the middle of the museum room.
Yeah.
There was actually a lot of okay, let's play with forms, but we're still doing something very specific. And Dali, for example, a lot of his tropes are super traditional. You've
Yeah.
got the patron saint of Spain on a white horse. You've got, the Virgin Mary. You've got his Christ, his like resurrecting Christ and his Christ on the hypercube.
Yeah.
Like he's taking very traditional motifs that he grew up seeing, Catholic country, grew up seeing these paintings, and then he's doing all this crazy stuff with them. And
Hmm.
so often you can tell he saw these classical forms and then he went to fall asleep and his mind gave him some incredible image because he
Yeah.
had that kind of mind, and oh well, that mind, a lot of us have that mind. He could then paint that thing on a canvas, different
Yeah.
story,
I
you
can
know.
imagine anything, but
Yeah, sure. I can imagine a horse riding a monkey in the Amazon, but I can't paint it. Um, but yeah,
but and
yeah,
that brilliance too to take that traditional and bring it into the modern, and there's no contradiction because it's eternal.
yeah,
Whatever it is, the art, the divine. I think that's the thing is like people spend so much time in art trying to be timely instead of trying to be timeless. Like
yeah.
timely gets you on Rolling Stone for a week, Kings of Leon, whatever. Like timelessness, that's Mozart.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, right? Because you've got this you've got artists that when you look at their work, you think, okay, this could be the canon, and it could have inspired a whole school, and it could like define a whole culture, and like that would make sense. It looks perfectly like it could do that, but it didn't do that. Instead, like we're still kind of languishing, you know.
Mhm.
You think that also with like certain cinematic genres where you watch a movie and you think, well, that should have spawned a whole way of doing cinema. It didn't, dude. We have like the 50th Thor Marvel movie. It didn't spawn anything the box office are dominated by this other stuff, you know. But they are there, and I suppose I'm not very musical in terms of talent at all, but my family is, and uh, somebody was playing what was it? It was like a performance of Ennio Morricone, so the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly soundtrack, but performed
Yeah.
live. And you're looking at that, you're thinking, wow, like that spiritualizes the New Mexico, Arizona type landscape in this very classical, beautiful way. Why isn't this more of a thing? Like, why
Mhm.
isn't this like a whole style of music? It's just one guy doing music for a few movies, but it kind of feels like it deserves to be a genre. You know, it deserves to have more going on in this direction. Um,
Well, I think that ties back into the conversation you had with Burden a bit, and we talked about earlier. Is in the economy of mammon, the market decides. The market tells you the good ideas and the good things win in the market, right? That's how we determine value.
yeah, I think it's because like the people used to really value. Well, people used to. People have always come in, you know,
Yeah,
different types, and some people value good art, and some people don't. But for sure, like they used to go to what, you know, see classical music and experience higher art, and that really defined, um, you know, the culture. And so, why does the market look so different now? And I think part of the reason is that the market is never was never supposed to be primary. The market
yeah,
or the economic sphere, or you know, consumer economy, it has to be it's wonderful, but it has to be downstream from all these institutions that actually inculcate good taste. Like, you
yep,
know, people go to church, people go to a school where they read the classics, people, all that stuff is happening, and it's not happening because it's like makes sense monetarily. It's happening because this is correct, and the kid has to get a good education, and the taste has to be formed in a particular way, and you have to know the, you know, the scripture and the canon of the culture. Once your taste is formed in that environment, the market is great because, yeah, you know, naturally people tend to gravitate to buy certain products that are better. But if you don't have that, what you end up is you get people addicted to sugar, so to
yeah.
speak, right? And that's what's easy. And so it's the lowest common denominator, and then it proliferates. And
Mhm.
it, you know, to our credit, there is good stuff out there. Like we're not totally given over to slop. But but I think that's what you need. You need, yeah, yeah. Market, it has to be, we said politics and culture are downstream from each other. Market has to be downstream. It has to be down. It's not upstream. It's down. It doesn't get to be. Because if the tastes aren't getting formed in a good school, in church, and whatever else, in a good household, uh, then the adult is going to be a slop consumer. So I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, the when I was growing up, the demonic term in in the '90s was indoctrination, and how awful it is to indoctrinate your child. It's like the word just means to bring into doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
and we believe in this myth, which I believe was a dialectical tool, honestly, of neutrality. That there's just magical neutralism, and that's where that somehow the objective good is in the magical neutral. That's the flip, and it's like no,
Totally.
your child should be taught how to think and what to think. That's the only way to build a society. You can't. That's that stupid line that I think like Ben Shapiro and a lot of guys pushed was school should be teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And it's like,
Mhm.
man, you're like an Orthodox Jew. You don't believe that.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't believe that. Like no one should believe that, especially for their own children. Children should be taught. People should be told what to think. And as we talked about male structure, feminine chaos, or fire, there's always room to question. There's always room to, but again,
Mm.
tie it all that together. Truth continually proves itself, and we believe that for science when it's a materialist truth. But that's the whole point of science. Can we replicate it? We
Hmm.
don't believe it for some reason for spiritual truths, even though those spiritual truths replicate themselves with or without us. And often, unfortunately, to tie back in with the prayer analogy, we perpetuate it upon ourselves in the bad sense.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I think so. I totally agree about the neutrality myth and this idea that it's possible to e- e- everything has to be neutral. Culture has to be a neutral space. Even education has to be neutral. And then as a result of that, people will gravitate towards some kind of good, because the point
Yeah.
of that neutrality is that you present it as good or a vehicle for the good. Well, the kind of good that you think they're going to gravitate towards is kind of like, what's a neutral good? Market efficiency. Presumably, that's the good that you're,
Yeah.
the natural working out of historical dialectics. Okay, a little more obscure, but all right. I guess you believe that there's just a thing happening and it's going to happen.
Mhm.
Better help it happen. But this, you take out of the recipe the deliberation, right? Like, okay, deliberate intention, moral decision making, that's not a part of the recipe for a good
Mhm.
society or for a functional human being. Why? Why is the higher order faculty not part of the recipe? Why is it just the lower base stuff? Because you're a materialist. You don't believe in the higher order faculties.
Yeah.
That's what they convinced you of. And what's weird is that a lot of very religious people were convinced that the conservative religious thing to do was to be a kind of weirdly sort of impotent economic liberal and not
Mhm.
interfere with these processes and try to take the liberation out of the public sphere. That's what the left does. The left tries
Yeah.
to occupy the public sphere. We're good people. We go home, watch TV, and complain about it.
Yeah.
That's really the mentality that we adopted. A whole generation of conservatives adopted that mentality. It's bizarre how that happened. In Europe,
I've
especially.
spoken with my mom about that. Brilliant woman, graduated college, I think at like 18. Came from like nothing. Like her family, I think sometimes they had a floor in their house, sometimes it was dirt. But I sat with her. And this wasn't boomer blaming or anything, but I asked her the questions like, how did your generation like allow abortion to happen? Like generally, and she's like, and she looked back on it, she goes, the argument was that it was safe and rare and that it wouldn't happen and that it was this vague thing. It's like,
Yeah.
good Lord, like it kind of gives you an insight to how those kind of ideas come. Like they come, and I realized this during like the Black Lives Matter thing was when defund the police became out, and like immediately my instinct said that's not a natural idea. That is
Mhm.
a really well formed, thought, forged weapon somewhere that is inserted. And that's how I started kind of realizing those mass narratives and mass ideas and memetics start. Like these aren't blunt instruments that the proletariat picks up and throws. This is a well forged weapon someone handed to somebody.
Mhm.
And I think that's the I think good ideas have to be that as well. I think good narratives have to be that they have to be well forged, disciplined, so that they pierce through the human heart, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, I agree. I think the the formula on which a political movement sort of legitimizes itself, or a political class justifies its power, I think that can it has to respond to the zeitgeist. And sometimes you just it just happens that the zeitgeist is there's been too much stuffy rule making, and we just need to let people breathe. And at the end of the day, we have to be compassionate to the exceptions. So sometimes
Mm-hmm.
this is a good thing, even if it's a bad thing 99% of the time. That kind of thing can be in the air because of what came before. So I'm not saying that it's wholly manufactured. I
Yeah.
think it has to do with has to do with a lot of things. Frankly, it has to do with the fact that we'd gotten through a bunch of wars in Europe very directly. America had fought a bunch. I mean, people were tired. Maybe it had to do with that, traumatized. But the zeitgeist, the way I see it, is like the wind. and you have to be the one that adjusts the sail properly. The sail could have been turned differently, but it was turned by the wrong people towards the wrong port. Um, and I think the zeitgeist now is different and probably a lot more fragmented because society is more fragmented. But there's good, propitious winds that could be that could steer us in the right direction. But I think uh, the political formula, as the Italian elite school theorists, they think that among other factors that can lead to a political elite falling and like an upstart competitive elite taking over and rising and actually changing a system, is that the formula that the political class is using just doesn't resonate anymore, and the holes are too evident, and it doesn't have the internal dynamism that it used to have, so it can't adapt. It can't figure out, how do I turn the sail so that this wind actually takes me to where I want to go, not where the people, the crew want to go, They can't figure it out anymore. They're just not that good. Like they've sort of fallen asleep on their laurels. And then another political class can come up with or a bunch of guys basically, and come up with a much better formula that really galvanizes people. And then yeah, you get a critical mass going and things can sort of turn over, and suddenly you have a new ruling class. Gaetano Mosca talks about this, but which is weird because people that like now talk about, oh, the political class is very strong, the elite is very strong, they tend to say the opposite. They tend to say you can't do anything
Yeah.
unless you get somebody from within the system to be on your side. You're not going to overturn anybody. You're not going to get your guys ascending any institutions or coming up with any new sort of centers of power. That's just not going to happen. Well, it can happen. And that doesn't mean that everybody who has any share of power loses it. No, some people will retain power for sure. But things can change massively. And I think also what ends up happening, if you aim to come up with a better formula and to try to really compete for power, that's what makes members of the elite jump ship. Like that they have to be a little bit scared. They have to be a lot scared for them to sort of switch program and decide, okay, we're going to do things differently, because doing things the same is it's just, the momentum of history. But if they start to get a little sense like, well, the proles are really angry out there. What's going on with the proles, man? Like, what's, not enough cake to eat? What's happening here? That's I think
not enough avocado toast to make up for the lack of housing.
exactly. Like, what's happening with the price of rye bread and avocado? Yeah.
That it reminds me of. Did you ever see Dragonheart with Sean Connery voicing a dragon?
Oh no, that sounds like the kind of thing I would have seen though.
You've
No, I
got
don't
you've got to see that. But this is a line that stuck with me since I was a kid and saw it. Is they're putting down an uprising, and the prince says the peasants are revolting, and the general says they've always been revolting, but now they're rebelling. And it's a dumb movie and a dumb line, but every time I think of any kind of like proletariat like revolution, I think of that. I was like, man, that's how they
Yeah.
one shotted me. Like this B movie just totally just.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Carlos,
Somehow I knew where that was going when you started the
yeah,
sentence. I was like, yeah. I jumped to that. Yeah.
Carlos, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I know it's late your time. It's supper time, my time. I've got the family I got to go out to. Um, Again, guys, you have to check out Carlos's channel, Europos. It's the best at what it does. I wouldn't have him on. I wouldn't say that if it wasn't true. Um,
Thank you very
you,
much.
you
Really
do
appreciate
something
that.
you do something no one else is doing that I think is a drastic step in the right direction for what needs to be done with this kind of commentary. I'd love to talk with you again, man. If we can make it happen, I'd love to get more people in here. I know some other like-minded guys. Brad Kelly, I'll send you a link to his. He's an artist and a writer I've had on before. I'll send you a link to his profile.
Awesome.
I meant to tell you, I sent my mother your Christmas video, your Christmas lore video, and she flipped out over it because she's a Christmas addict in every sense of the word, historian, and every decorating in July. And you had stories and you had lore in there. She had no idea, and she absolutely loved it. So she would want me to tell you that.
So glad that I privated it now because I take videos that don't do so well off, like I unlist them. Sorry, but that was a great. That's one of my favorites that I did. I wanted to do it even longer, so next Christmas I probably will. But I'm very glad somebody enjoyed that one because it didn't get that many views. But yeah,
Well, this old woman from the south of America loved it. So
that's awesome. Very appreciative.
she'd make you some biscuits if they wouldn't get caught at customs. So,
Yeah.
but
They
I've
get eaten
thoroughly
by
enjoyed
somebody
it,
at
man.
the airport.
Yeah, right. Somebody who doesn't need to eat them. They've already had enough.
Yeah.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it, man. I look forward to interacting with you more on
Likewise.
Twitter and on here. And we're trying to build a series on reenchantment, on remystification. I've got a few select people I would like to have a part of it, to do a very long talk, to put into a very long either video / kind of video presentation or series, and the importance of that. And I'd love for you to be part of that. Guys, go subscribe, like, and check out Europos. You have to follow Carlos on X. It's is it Carlos Perona? It's just one word.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Carlos Perona. I'll put it in the description as well. To Shill, because I have an artist as well, a business partner, godfilluniverse.com. We have free to read stuff. Check it out. We have short films. If you enjoyed this talk, this is the kind of stuff we go into. I just don't speak it as eloquently as Carlos does. So maybe if you watch his stuff and read our stuff, maybe it'll make you feel a little bit more intellectual than just reading it alone. So, artist supporting artist, everything great. Carlos, I look forward to another conversation with you sometime, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it. Awesome conversation.
Man. Have a good night, man.
You too.